Hey guys, I'm so excited about this. So I mentioned in our New Year's post back in January that I would be doing a little video series this year on our family story. I'm so excited to really break this down and share this with you guys, as I really spent a lot of last year reflecting, as I talked about in that post, and realized that in all of my years of blogging, I have only shared tiny little mentions of parts of our story. I have never broken it down for you guys, and it is so important. It literally motivates every single thing that we do. It motivates a lot of what you see on the blog, and you guys aren't seeing the why behind it. So I am excited to share that with you. This past year, as we really reflected and looked back on our story, that we just became so aware that God wrote this story. I mean, it's just so obvious. He made that so clear, and that's so powerful and amazing to realize. And I just feel really called that now's the time to share it with you guys. Missed that New Year's post, make sure you check it out. I've linked to it above in this post, but it really gives you a good introduction to this series and kind of where we're coming from, some of where we're headed, and just gives you a good foundation before we launch into all the specifics of how this story took shape for us. So make sure you check that out. Throughout all of my research with business building and branding, one thing I keep coming back to is that everybody needs a why. That you need a phrase that motivates and directs all of your decisions. Well, in 2016, we realized that our family needed that, and that had been developing over a whole marriage, but we just didn't have the words to put to it yet. And so that's something we really spent time in prayer over this last year, kind of found out what that was. So I'm going to be sharing that specifically with you guys later in the story, but you're going to see that develop as I share kind of where we've come from. So that's a little introduction. Today in video 1, I am going to be talking about our background and just laying the foundation for what kick-started this story. Throughout this story, you're going to hear about our renovation journey, our debt journey, the development of the blog, the growth of our family, and just really the overall vision that we feel like God's given us for our life. And for us, all of those are so intertwined. So I'm excited to share that with you. So let's launch right into what we're talking about today, which is just the foundation for kind of where our story began. So Chris and I were college sweethearts, got engaged right after I graduated, and right after we got engaged, something special happened. We had been going to a church here in Greenville throughout college. We joined that church, joined a community group, and right at the same time, the church offered something they called the One Series. And it was all about God's plan for marriage and how as a husband and wife, you could be one together. And it was powerful. It taught us so much. But one key thing stood out for us, and still to this day, is kind of defining our marriage. And that was this idea of adventure. One week they talked about the idea that your family and as a couple, you need an adventure. And it has to be more specific than just, oh, we're trying to have a family and further the kingdom. That's great. But what's the unique way that you guys are going to do that that's different than other families? What does it look like for your unique God-given skills and abilities to shape and set you on this adventure that brings glory to God in a way other families aren't doing? Their adventure looks different. And I can clearly remember we left that day at church, got in the car, and Chris immediately said, I have no idea what that is for us. And I didn't either. And it's something that we desperately tried to find, which is funny because looking back, obviously that's something that God is going to, you have to be open to it, but God is going to kind of develop that over time, which He did. Within a year, we could put words to what that was for us. But at the time, we couldn't. And that was a really powerful concept that started to shape our minds. So we got married, and within a few months, bought our first house. We actually bought a foreclosure out by where we had gone to school, and some of you may know this, it was a fraternity house for our college that we didn't even realize when we saw it because they'd had it for such a short time. The neighborhood kicked them out pretty quickly, which worked out well for us because they weren't able to do as much damage as they might have done had they been there longer. But for us, it was all we could afford. We both at that time were making 20-something thousand a year and had an insurmountable amount of college debt. So we bought what we could afford. And when we moved in, we were so excited to make that a home for our family. You know, neither one of us had a clue that design and renovation would be something we loved. I had only ever done design as a very small hobby, as in designing my childhood bedroom over and over. I redid it a bunch because I loved that, but never had it been a thought that I would do that in any bigger capacity than that. When we bought that house, Chris had zero background in renovation. That was not on his radar. He was handy and he could figure things out, but that was not anywhere in his vision. So it's really cool that looking back, God saw something in us that was going to really bring us together, and we had no clue when we got married. That's one of the main things that draws us together now, that we really enjoy doing together, but at that point we had no clue. So we were excited to take this little brick rancher, you know, former frat house, and turn it into a beautiful spot for our family to grow. We envisioned being there 20 to 25 years, and maybe forever. We thought we're going to bring our babies home here. We're going to raise them here, you know, so it was an exciting time to start making that home for our family. During that first year, some special things started happening because people started asking us, hey, I want to see what you guys are renovating. Send us pictures and email us befores and afters and all this kind of stuff. And I was a communications major in college. At that point, I was getting my master's in creative writing. I wanted to do something in the writing world, but didn't really know what. But y'all, I had never heard of a blog. I'm not joking. I had no clue what a blog was. And someone suggested it. Hey, you should start a little personal blog, detail y'all's renovation, and then people can follow it that way. So I did. I started that with zero ambition or even knowledge that it really could be a business. But it was a way to share what we were doing. So I started that. I also, as I started making this a home for our family, fell head over heels in love with not just design and finding my style, but literally the idea of home. Just creating a haven for us that felt like us, that we loved, and then writing about it. So that kind of started to take shape for me. For Chris, some really fun things happened because he fell in love with renovating. And looking back, it was so much fun to watch him just fall in love with that and figure it out. Like, I still remember one day he woke up, it was a Saturday, and said, I think I'm going to put up a wall there in the hallway so that we have a master suite. It was a hall bath in our bedroom. He wanted to put up a wall so that that was closed off and our bath was in the bedroom. In a way. I said, oh honey, that's great. We should look into how to do that. He goes, yeah, I'm going to do it today. And I'm going to figure it out on YouTube. And by that night, there was a wall there. And we had a master suite that needed a little finishing, but it was there. And that's just one example of the really cool things that started to happen for him, that we both had these God-given gifts that were untapped and that we were really unaware of. And we discovered those together and developed a passion for that. And renovating and creating a home for ourselves started to become something in that first year that brought us together, that we were just excited to do together. And just, we really had a great time with that. Also during that first year, some other things started to happen. We started to become painfully aware of our financial situation and how dire it was. At that point, we were still in those first jobs. We didn't really know, we knew they weren't forever jobs, but we did not know what the future looked like for either of our careers. And we literally were making less than $30,000 each at that time. And with no hope of making more. I mean, we didn't know how we would make more. We had no vision for that. But we had several $100,000 in college debt. Shocking. And we'd added a mortgage to that. So we really started to process that for us, we were enslaved. You know, the Bible says don't be a slave to the lender, and God He doesn't want us to be tied to debt for many reasons that I'm going to continue to unpack that we've discovered. But that statement could not be truer. We literally were enslaved. Our church during that year also offered a series from Dave Ramsey, financial peace, which many of you I think have done it. I know it's come up from time to time, and I've talked with some of you. If you've not, oh my gosh, please go buy it tomorrow, because it brought us together in a way and gave us financial tools that literally will shape our entire life. While financial peace was amazing for us, we also became really depressed, because we realized that, yes, all his tools are awesome, but with the amount of debt we had, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and with what we were making, that may only increase a little bit over time. We didn't have big visions of, that income changing at all. We weren't going to survive. We really started to realize that for us, the debt wasn't like, oh, we're going to take a smaller vacation this year, and that's annoying, but it's okay. No, we're going to fail. Like, we're not going to make it. And we processed that once I graduated grad school, which I did, and our bills were about to start coming up because they had been deferred with me still being in school. We literally were not going to be able to pay the monthly payments. Like, they were going to have to be deferred indefinitely. And even if we could pay those monthly payments, it was going to take us 30 years to pay all of that off. Our family was going to feel enslaved to those payments for 30 years. And at the end of 30 years, we would have paid twice what we owed at that point because of interest. We really just started to feel like something had to give. Around that time, we also started to process that kind of the vision we felt like God had for us as far as family. And we knew we wanted a big family. We knew that we felt like God was calling me to be home with them, even if I did, which we kind of hoped I would do, something as an outlet that might provide some income, but that my priority would be at home with our kids. We both felt so strongly about that. And also realized that literally was impossible. Like, all of these pieces for what we feel like God's calling us to do and our reality cannot go together. And it just really launched us into a time of despair and just trying to find a way out of it when there literally seemed to be no way. So that lays the foundation for what launched all this. Okay, that first house, just the dire straits we were in with debt and how that did not add up with the visions for our family. Next week, I am going to launch into what changed that and what God started to do in our hearts and our lives that sent us in a different direction. So tune in next week to hear that. It's going to be good, y'all. Thanks for listening.